Well, good evening and welcome to the first of three family life events. Maria and I are really excited about tonight, aren't we?
We are. And whatever your lockdown experience has been, whether it's been a positive one, a negative one, or something in the middle, we do hope that tonight will be a really great experience for you.
So let's introduce our hosts, Jonathan and Andrea, for tonight. And whilst they're just coming on screen, let me just tell you about them. Together they have a wealth of experience in conflict and resolution. Andrea is actually one of our trustees of the church, and together with her husband, Jonathan, they run the Soulmates Academy and have been helping individuals, companies and couples manage their relationships for many years now.
So tonight's talk is titled, How Can People You Love Be So Frustrating at Times? It's interactive, so do email in your questions and John and Andrea will try their best to answer them.
Okay, so hi Jonathan, Andrea, how are you doing?
We're doing great.
Great.
Really delighted, looking forward to this.
Excellent. Well, we are as well, so let us hand over to you.
Okay, well, hello everybody. What a privilege it is for us to be just sharing some thoughts to help support our St. Albans Vineyard community through COVID-19. Who would have ever thought we would be here? And, you know, we're all going through our different experiences with lockdown. For some, very sadly, it is a time of grieving loss, and our prayers go out to those who've lost loved ones. Yeah. For some, it could be loss of jobs. It could be concerns over finances. For some, it could be isolation, feeling vulnerable, being on the front line. So many different experiences of it. For many of us, it's this business of homework, school colliding all under one roof and juggling jobs and children and partners, and life can be a bit hectic. And it just means that at home, chances are we're all experiencing some cauldron of emotions. You know, our stress levels are heightened. We're not sure what the future looks like. We are, our brain is processing things all the time, which means it's always on alert. And that just means relationships can be really under stress. Now, we've not done a pandemic before, but we've certainly done twice this experience of having to work from home, live together, work together with the financial pressures and, you know, worrying about the future. So we're looking forward to sharing some thoughts, some of the lessons that we learned. And in fact, it was the first experience early in our marriage that got us started in this whole business of relationship education, which we've been doing for about 25 years now. It was that very first experience. And
Absolutely.
We were reminded of that recently.
We were reminded of it literally just before lockdown kicked in, because we, having been working at home for the last 3 years ourselves, both of us, as lockdown was about to kick in, we thought we'd take the opportunity to go and work out of the house for the last time before we couldn't. Everywhere else was shutting down around us. So we went out and we sat in our local supermarket cafe. And as we beavered away, this friend dropped in. And long story short, it turned out the friend, he had done the school run that morning. This is about almost midday now, and he still hadn't gone home. He just
dragging his feet,
finding any excuse not to go home, because as it turned out, his wife had actually started working from home the week before, and it was just invading his space. The guy was saying, look, I just feel I can't focus, I can't do anything. She just wants to chat. She was used to working in an open plan office and discussing lots of things, and he just was used to having his complete solitude and silence, and that had been shattered for him. And he just couldn't bring himself to say to her, you know, button it a little bit, I need to get on with work here. But, you know, we're able to share some tips and ideas with him on how to have the conversation around scheduling and, you know, allowing time for when we're going to talk, and when we're going to have some silent times, quiet times. I mean, for us, we have this principle that we established a while ago where we have different workspaces. And if I need to come and have a conversation in the middle of the day, I'll knock on the door and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work for us to have that chat.
Not that the door is locked. I don't lock him out.
Open door, but still knock on the door saying, can we have that conversation now rather than just interrupt midstream?
Yeah, it's a habit of, is it a good time to talk, or are you in midstream? So, we're really looking forward to sharing the thoughts, and what we'll do is share our story to give it some context. The plan is that the sessions are interactive, so please feel free, type your questions, and we'll catch up with them as we go along.
Looking at the side of the screen here, we're seeing some comments coming in already. So hi guys, great to have you with us. Keep the comments coming.
Hi Richard, great to have you all.
Your eyes will be all over the shop. We're watching lots of things coming in.
What we're going to do is pull out the key challenges that we faced and the lessons that we learned, which really distill into the 4 habits of all successful relationships. Some of you may have seen the TEDx talk where we shared these 4 habits, and by God's grace, the viewings on that video, it's not even a year yet. It's a year, middle of this month, and the viewings, it's over 1.1 million views, and we share that humbly to say it's resonating because it's talking about challenges that all relationships face, and challenges that get really exacerbated in a lockdown situation. So in this session, as you know, we're talking about loving through frustrations, life up close and personal with your nearest and dearest and children and everything under one roof. How can you have more what we call space and grace for that? Next week, we'll be talking about how to deal with the inevitable conflict that will arise, and how to treat each other well, use the conflict to strengthen rather than damage the relationship. So how to do conflict well, really. And in the 3rd week, we'll be talking about how you can clarify your own values and create healthy boundaries so that you can come out of lockdown with an even better, a healthier, more sustainable work-life balance. So we really look forward to sharing those sessions. I think to kick it off, we're going to just share our story. And there's a particular line in there that John likes to say, so he's going to share that bit. You'll get the line in a second.
You'll get the line in just a second. Well, our story actually goes back to just over 30 years ago when we first met, way back in 1989, when Andrea first came to the UK to get her master's. And the story goes, she also got her Mr. as well. Boom.
That's the line.
That's the line. So there you go. This is a long time ago. 4 years on, we were married. We then had the fabulous opportunity of going and living and working out in Tokyo, in Japan. And at the end of that period, because we were, I guess, how many, 9 time zones, I think it is, away from our nearest family and friends, we felt we had really bonded as a unit. And so on our return to the UK, we figured we had the qualifications, we had the passion as entrepreneurs, etc. Why don't we set up in business together? How hard
can it be?
Well, it took us all of about 3 months before the wheels started coming off big time, because we realized we had very, very different work styles. And the different work styles actually showed up in one simple thing was just in the state of our desks.
So still does.
And still does to this day, because one of our desks was very neat and tidy and organized, the one you can see on the screen there. And the other one was perhaps what some might call organized chaos. I'll let you guess whose was which. But the challenge we had was, this is the mid-90s now. We only had one PC. This is before laptops were, everybody had a laptop almost, so kind of that kind of territory. Single laptop happened to be on my desk. Don't know how that happened, but there it was. And the challenge we'd have is whenever we had to swap desks to use the single PC that we had, because Andrea had no problem working in my organized space. You could just sit down and crack on. I would rock up at her desk, and again, no big issue. I'd just try and tidy a few things so I could have some space, because I couldn't work in the chaos. And that didn't work so well. Leave my piles alone. What are you doing? That conversation just didn't go so well. Anyway, for us, I guess we came across some material that helped us realize that our biggest challenge really was just our different strengths. It turns out it was actually our strengths, unrecognized, unappreciated, and out of balance, that were causing us all manner of grief. So what do we get there? Oh, so I guess we had a couple of light bulb moments. For me, the big light bulb moment was recognizing that we are just not the same. Yes, God made us equal and we're equivalent, but Andrea was never going to be the same as me. She was never going to think, feel, and act the same way as me. And for me, it really was a duh moment, because I recognized that she was never going to be me. And actually, that was a good thing,
Yes.
Because she had some real strengths that up until that point I hadn't been able to see or admit. She had strengths that I didn't have, and where I could see my own strengths, of course, but I couldn't see stuff. And then I started to gradually recognize she had strengths, and that made us recognize that actually, when we put the two of us together, and you had a little bit of skill and understanding how it all worked, and you had the will to keep the relationship alive, we can actually make a very powerful team. And that's what we've been sharing really for the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
It's this you plus me plus a little bit of skill plus a little bit of will can make for a great team. And that's, as I say, is the essence of some of the principles we've been sharing.
So that's the context of what got us started, and really why this whole lockdown experience resonates so strongly with us, because we know that these are the challenges that we'll face. Under lockdown, the differences get magnified. And when you add to that the heightened stress levels, you know that things will just sometimes come out wrong, and we get tipped over the edge very easily. It could be just little niggles. For John, for example, he doesn't like the way I clear my throat, and I'll spare you the example.
Yes, please.
For some people, it could be the toilet seat up or down. It could be toothpaste or the tube squeezed the wrong way, clothes on the floor. Just feel free to pop in the box, pop in the chat box.
Different desks.
Yeah.
Some very messy, apparently.
Yeah, pop in.
That's how some
mine
people
is
work.
messy too.
The creative people, creative desks, I think we'll call them.
So just feel free to share as much as you want to share about what your little niggles are. As a matter of fact, it's so common. We think our niggles are okay. There's a reason why they're there, but everybody else's is a character flaw. And that's such a common way of looking at things that psychologists actually have a term for it. It's called fundamental attribution error, which means if I do something like clearing my throat, it's all circumstantial. There's a logical reason for it. But if John does something, it's a really bad character flaw.
Dysfunctional, basically. Something
that he needs to work on. And that's the way we think. So that's one reason why we can easily get the messy desk rule. Yes, John. That's one reason why we can get so frustrated. These little niggles invade our space. There is no escape. We're at home and just constantly bumping into each other. But there is another level of frustration, and that's what we learned, is that we're actually wired differently. Yeah. And the thing is, we're not really experienced in dealing with when people disappoint our expectations, when they think, act, or respond in a way that's totally different to ours, because we think our way is normal, which means their way is wrong. And that's where the problems start. Yeah. I have to give a shout out to Jenna, who did an amazing Sunday message where she spoke about the 3 things to quit. Quit complaining, quit comparing, quit complaining, and quit compromising, which means we have to get better and better at turning up as our best selves, even when our partner or our children are being their worst selves. But the question is, how do we do that? How do we clothe ourselves in compassion and kindness and patience? How do we, for a lot of weddings, 1 Corinthians 13 is the verse that they choose.
Absolutely.
And some mornings, if you were to read it, I would say, okay, first thing, 1 Corinthians 13 verse 4 says, love is patient. Okay, that's me done for the day. It's 9 o'clock and I've blown it. Can we start again tomorrow, Lord? But 1 Corinthians 13:5 is even more demanding. Love doesn't seek its own way. It's not irritable or rude, and it keeps no record of being wronged. How do we do that in the moment? So what we're going to do is one of the things that is really important, we have to learn how to understand differences and respect differences to the point where we can anticipate behaviors, adjust our approaches, knowing who we're dealing with and how they're likely to respond, give more allowance, especially under pressure, so that we can show more patience and we can just not get offended so easily. And the more we can do that, the more we can experience that space and grace, that patience in relationship, the compassion that we're talking about. And that's why the first habit that we coach people is habit number 1, be curious, not critical, which is about suspending that judgment that you're wrong, I'm right, I'm normal, you're not, what you did is a real character flaw and all that stuff. just suspending that criticism and finding out more about the other person's perspective. So what we're going to do is share a model with you that just helps you understand fundamental differences better. So we realize that our version of normal is just one version of normal, and other people around us can have their version of normal as well.
Absolutely.
So over to John.
Love the comment though coming through the chat there, saying, I think it was Emma saying, yes, Bugbear comes down the stairs to find a crisp packet on the sofa 1 foot away from the bin. Help! Yep, no, that one.
I get that.
Why did they do that?
And Karen said that pile of used tea bags. Yep. Food caddy lived open. Yep, I can hear it. Yep.
Well, as we've come to discover, as Andrew was saying, a lot of this actually comes down to the behavior of the individual, which is driven largely by their personality. So you've got to, as part of being curious, you've got to understand a bit more about them. And you've got to understand a bit more about yourself and understand the different personalities. Because if both of you are happy with coming downstairs and finding the crisp packet on the sofa, then
that's not an issue.
Not an issue.
That's not
if
a
one
fight.
is happy and one isn't, then you've got a bit of a challenge on.
Yeah.
But once you understand why people do what they do, it makes life a whole lot easier. So the model that we want to share with you very quickly here is a personality model that we came across way back in the day, 25 years ago or so. And there are many personality models out there. A number of you will have come across them. But the one that we found 25 years ago really spoke to us for a couple of reasons. One, because it really is very powerful and gave us a common language that we can share as a family. But also it's very simple. It's so simple, in fact, that we shared it with both our boys before they were 10. And they all kind of got it. So as a family, we have this common language. And we can use that to either sometimes call out different personalities or, just share understanding and really just build each other up. And what it does is it uses 2 dimensions. So it says there's some people that are wired to basically take charge. They're sort of the natural leaders. They want to take charge, and that's kind of where they're always in that space. And then at the other end of that dimension, there are those who are happier to allow others to take charge. Now, the natural leaders are not so happy to allow others to take charge, but some people wanted to lead and others are happy to let others lead. And then on the other dimension, the vertical dimension, you have some people who are very much task focused. They're all about getting the job done. And the other end of that dimension, you have people who are all about the people. They're very much people focused. And the example we love to use to explain this is if you have the example of people will get in a boat to say we're going to the other side as a group or a team. The task focused people will, if they're in charge, they will get you to the other side. Come hell or high water, they will get you to the other side of that lake. Now, when you get to the other side of the lake, they may look around and find, what happened here? The boat's empty. Everybody else bailed out because they couldn't stick it. But that's what task people do at the extreme. It's all about getting to the other side. Whereas the people-focused people will make sure everybody's happy and comfortable in the boat, but they may never actually get to the other side of the lake. And that's the difference that we're trying to caricaturize here. Now, when you put the 4 together, you get 4 animal personalities. So you get the lions, who are all about the take charge and get the job done. And these are action-oriented, goal-focused people. You also have the otters, who are the take charge but people-focused people. And they are the creative, fun-loving networkers. You have the golden retrievers in the bottom right corner, who are people-focused and happy to let others take charge. And the golden retrievers are very much warm, caring, relational people.
Relational ones, yeah.
And then you have the beavers, who are task-focused and happy to let others lead sometimes. And they are very much about attention to detail, quality, perfection.
Getting it right.
Those are great people. I have a lot of beaver in this. You can see these are some of the people I like. They keep neat and tidy desks, these beavers. So then you
of course, that's caricaturizing a bit. Nobody is any extreme of anything. Everybody is a blend of it. And what we need to learn to do is just understand that these worlds exist, these views on life exist, and know how to flex around each other. So the lions, for example, somebody wants to be a roaring otter. Yes. The lions, for example, have great hearts, and they never intend to crush or hurt, but they're so they're so in charge. They can be very direct. They can come across as very powerful, sometimes intimidating. Because they're direct, they can come across as blunt. They'll be the ones who in lockdown at home will be pushing people to get on with things, to conquer things, to get things done. Very little patience to see people resting and hanging around. But if you're ever in a crisis, you'll definitely want a lion to be in charge. The otters, and I can speak forever about this. I'm an otter. They're the fun-loving, creative, networking ones. They're the ones who love to have people around and might struggle a little bit in lockdown if there aren't enough people around. They get bored very quickly with monotony and routine, and even the meals need to be different sometimes. Yep. If you have children who are otters, just brace yourself for summer and just try and be as creative as you can, because they'll get bored very easily. And then we have the beavers, which is John's favorite category. You making notes there?
I am. One of the questions coming in here, well, we can answer it now. How can you keep no record of wrongs? When one thing goes wrong, everything that's ever gone wrong just flashes before my eyes.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we see that, and we empathize with that. It's not easy. But what we found, as Andrew was talking about space and grace, once you actually understand why they're doing what they're doing, and they're actually, believe this or not, they're not doing it just to wind you up. I know you didn't think of that, but you thought they were just doing it to wind you up. They're doing it because it's just the way they're wired.
Yeah.
And what I had to realize is that's the way they're wired. And yes, it may be a weakness or a character failing or whatever. You're going back to fundamental attribution error. You may think that's what it is. But actually, you've got to recognize that they have other strengths, other things that they're fantastic at. And you can't have it all. It's they have this, but they don't have that. You can't. None of us are perfect out there. We have things that we're good at, but there are other things that we're not so great at.
And it's learning to give space for people to bring the strengths that they bring, and giving them a space to also have weaknesses around that, because that's the flip side of the strength.
Speaking of the strengths and weaknesses, us beavers are great attention to detail people, great for quality, all the good things in life, all the order, detail things, buildings, all that kind of good stuff comes from beavers, because they like attention to detail. But the flip side of that is they can be, or I'm speaking for us beavers now, we can be crippling sometimes, because we want everybody else to line up with the way we have things done, and mess. We don't like mess. And in lockdown, you've got to recognize that with more people in the house, the mess levels are going to go up. Unless you've got a house full of beavers, you're going to have a bit more mess. For me, actually, one of the scriptures that really spoke to me back in the day was Proverbs, 14, I think it is. Yeah, 14:4. Simple scripture, but basically says, where no oxen are, the trough is clean, but much strength comes from an ox. So you've got to choose. What do you want? Do you want the empty trough, or do you want the strength of the ox? Because you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can't have your cake and eat it. It's one or the other. And for me, I said that really spoke powerfully. And then the golden retrievers. Great at making sure everybody feels looked after. They're the natural caregivers. In fact, in lockdown, golden retrievers are the ones who are likely to be out of the house.
On the front
They're
line,
likely to be
probably
on the front line. They're going to be, the nurses, the caregivers, the teachers. They've gravitated into roles where they're looking after people and caring for them. And so they're typically not around. Now, golden retrievers, they tend not to like a whole lot of conflict. So in conflict situations, they'll want their space and solitude, and sometimes you may just need to let them go and find their space to recharge their batteries before they can come back.
Absolutely.
But basically, going back to the question we had earlier, it's understanding that people are fundamentally different. And once we have that understanding, we realize they're not doing it just to be difficult, then we can start to give them a bit more space and grace and say, actually, you know what, I'll cut you some slack, because there are things that I'm doing that are also not so good here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the challenge comes with misunderstanding each other, not having this knowledge, so that we're judging rather than giving each other space. And when you look at the diametric opposites, that's where you can have real tension if people don't understand their own strengths and weaknesses, and other people's as well. So for example, if we change to the next slide, John, for example, under pressure, lions roar. And we know that because especially in the early days, we roared a lot. And there are 3 lions in this house. We just know how to roar better these days. That can be overwhelming to some people. And that's why some people will have the perception of being bullied, or of other people trying to bully them, when really lions expect you to roar back, because to them that's normal. in giving feedback, they can be very direct, and that can be too blunt or harsh for some people. So there's a whole lot of misunderstanding that can happen on that diametric opposite if lions don't understand how they land with other people, and if the more caring, nurturing personalities don't have the skills or don't feel equipped to push back. And on the other,
I was going to say, by the way, this applies to all relationships.
Yeah.
This is not just couples we're talking about here. This applies to your colleagues at work, to your boss, to your...
That's what Shagun's just said, even to single people living at home. Absolutely.
To anybody, to your kids, to parents, to in-laws, the whole lot. This is about people relating one to another.
Yeah, and we can crush each other if we don't understand how our behavior lands with people. That's the point of this. And on the next slide is the same thing with the other dimension with beavers and otters. You know, that's what we experience. I'll show you a picture so that you get a point. So Jon's very attention to detail, engineering mind, needs structure and order. And I'm a little bit more free-flowing, as you probably see now. And once we had this presentation to do, and I came up with brilliant ideas, how we're going to work for the client. It's going to be win-win and, you know, wonderful. And showed it to Jon, and his, you know, instead of getting this awe at my amazingness,
I was underwhelmed.
He was underwhelmed and telling me, you know, I can't follow the structure. It's not bullet pointed with the order, and the fonts are all over the place. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You haven't even read the detail. Anyway,
I couldn't see the detail.
It was kind of like this. So I thought I was presenting him this lovely meal, and what he was seeing was this.
Basically, a spaghetti mess in the bowl when she thought it was a nicely presented thing.
You know, there is so much that we could share, and so much that, you know, we would want to race through. But the point is this: we're different. We need to learn to respect the differences and give people space. The more we understand about them, the more that we can be gracious in our response, cut them some slack, not get offended so easily, and just have more patience in dealing with the fact that people see things differently and come across differently. So the habit to remember in all of this is be curious, not critical. There is no surprise. Before we get to that, the couple of verses I want to share, you know, to live out 1 Corinthians 13, there's no surprise that 1 Corinthians 13 comes after 1 Corinthians 12. That's not just counting. I can count well.
Numbers, not maths. 1
Corinthians 12 is all about differences. And 1 Corinthians 12:17 will pop up on the screen in a minute. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? We need each other to be different, and we need to give each other space to be different without judging and criticizing, so that we all benefit as a body, as a couple, as a family. Couples, teams, families, so many people lose out on great teamwork because the person who compliments us the most is usually most frustrating in the beginning, because they're typically are opposite. Opposites attract. This is about learning to make that attraction last a lifetime.
Absolutely. And I think that the Passion Translation puts it beautifully when we talk about habit number 1. It says, love overlooks the mistakes of others, but dwelling on the failures of others devastates friendships. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. You've got to be able to look beyond those mistakes, be curious, go back to, back to that wonderful question that we had earlier. This is not about focusing on the things, all the flooding back of all the things that they've ever done wrong. You've got to get to the point of looking beyond that, because dwelling on that is just not going to help your relationship anytime soon.
Yeah,
it's about building that understanding. And once you have the understanding both of yourself and of others, you can then move forward in the relationship and take it to the next level.
And if we get it wrong, and even if we get it right, it leads to conflict. And we're going to teach you how to do conflict well next week.
It's going to start to look at it. Conflict's a big old subject, but we'll start looking at that next week.
Gosh, half an hour came and went very quickly. I feel like we've been chomping through that, but hopefully it landed well and helped.
Great questions coming, great comments, I should say, coming through in the box. So thank you, guys.
If you have any questions, just pop them in the chat box now. I think we have, 1 minute left? And we want to...
we'll try and answer them.
Over to Trevor and Maria.
Hi. Thank you very much. It's been really good. Obviously, it's a bit of a recap for us because we've been through this with you before and really enjoyed it, particularly the personality side of things. But one thing you mentioned a little earlier was about space. And often you hear with couples, somebody says, "I need my own space." And I always think, well, what does that actually mean? When someone says, "Oh, just give me some space, I need some space," some people even say, "Leave so I can have some space," or "I'll leave so I can have some space."
Yeah.
What are they actually saying?
Sometimes it's about how people feel refueled, and some people feel refueled by having lots of people around. They can get re-energized with that, and some people that just drains their energy. It's too much to process, and they literally need time and space to regroup. And when you're in lockdown together, sometimes you just need to give each other breathing space so you don't rub up and grate against each other so often.
I would say two things. One is it's about physical space, sometimes just having physical space, to be apart, to regroup, as Andrew said.
Like us on our desks. He's in another room.
I'm in the east wing, Andrew's in the west wing. Yeah, I'm just in the next room, and never mind. I'm in a corner in the dining room. But the other thing is, so it's either about that, but sometimes it's just about time. Just about time out could also be the space bit. People, especially the golden retrievers in a conflict situation, just need time out. They need to sort of get away from it and regroup before they can come back and have the conversation, because they can't process things in the midst of conflict. So it's a couple of those things. It's either the time or the physical space that sometimes we need to allow people to have.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Anybody else?
I see Sarah Grace has said, I encourage clients to use praying hands to show I need space and prayer.
There you go. Yep.
Fabulous. Thank you all for being so engaged. We're seeing all different personality types.
Absolutely.
Lions with retrievers. Yeah, wonderful. Every personality type in any relationship, every combination works as long as you get the understanding of how you're different and you respect and support each other in that.
They all have strengths and they all have blind spots.
Yeah.
No one is perfect. It's a mix. It's about learning what works well for the particular person you're trying to relate to. And again, back to whether it's your spouse or partner or your kids or colleagues, your friends, whoever it is. It's about understanding yourself, understanding them, and then figuring out what works for that particular relationship.
Be curious, not critical. And with that, we're going to hand back to Trevor and Maria to close us out.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, I'm really looking forward to next week, which we're talking about conflict next. We'll say we're talking. Andrew and Jonathan are talking about conflict resolution, so that should be interesting. But let's finish with a prayer, shall we? Let's just give God a little bit of a moment just to speak into our lives. Father, we just thank you for the wisdom that you have brought tonight through Jonathan and Andrea. We just thank you for the passion that they put into relationships, that they've given their whole lives to this ministry and this business that they run. And I just ask you, first of all, bless them in what they do. But also, Lord, bless each person that's been on with us tonight and everybody in our church and everybody who's at home, isolated from other people, Lord, that are where relationships are in conflict, where people are finding they're rubbing shoulders a bit too much with their partners or their brothers or their sisters or their housemates or whoever it might be. Lord, I just pray for some peace, Lord. I pray for your wisdom, that we can understand that we are different, that an eye is not the same as an ear, and a hand is not the same as a knee, and a heart is not the same as a liver, Lord. And we all play our parts in this wonderful kingdom. So bless us as we leave this meeting tonight. Bless our hosts and just remind us to come back next week and ready for the conflict resolution.
And remember, whatever tonight may raise, be kind to one another.
Okay. Lovely to see you all. Bye.
Bye.